there's some addictive aspect to it as well, because it seems like just people, they love it. I've gone to family gatherings where the Christmas music pops up during Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
That's how much people crave that Christmas feeling. In a way, it's good, but also that's like whenever you have a dependence on something that you have to celebrate it for a whole month because you want to be in that good mood, because that's what gets you in a good mood. I was like, man, maybe that's a little bit too much for me. And then also the corporations are exploiting it. So yeah, it's really hard for me to disassociate all these like bad aspects of it. That's why sometimes when I'm driving and I do listen to Un Burrito Sabanero, even though it's a really cheesy song, it's a more pure experience for me to just hear that. Even though
Simpler times.
maybe, and even though in Spanish they're probably using that to try to drive consumerism also, but I don't have that association. Maybe because I don't listen to enough Spanish radio, and you don't hear El Burrito Sabanero in every single store that you get, so it's not playing over and over, right? So you don't get tired of it. Yeah.
That's funny because the day you hear Burrito Sabanero in a Christmas, during Christmas in a store, you know the Latinos have made it.
Los pastores de Belén vienen a adorar al niño, la Virgen y San José lo reciben con cariño.
Never heard that
Tutaina
song.
tuturumaina. Where my Colombians at? La novena empieza hoy.
Is that a
This is the
Colombian
best
song?
part of the song. Hold on. This is it. There's a Tutaina tuturuma. Tutaina tuturumaina. Tutaina tuturuma turuma. Tutaina
What does that
tuturumaina.
mean?
Woo!
Tutaina, what does that mean?
Tutaina, nobody knows.
Is that
I think I looked it up once. Tutaina might be either a play on words or some magical device that was brought to us by the Spanish and the Catholics.
Interesting. So this is the song that you guys would play in Colombia during the novena?
Well, it was one of the songs. So basically, what happened was that
Wait,
obviously
before we get into that, why don't you give us the intro as to what this episode is about?
Yes, so this episode is about, I guess, Latino cultural traditions, and more specifically in this case, about Colombian and Mexican Christmas traditions. Feliz Navidad. So yes, that's the topic that we'd like to discuss today. Anything you would like to add, Romero?
Yeah, well, I also wanted to ask you, because you have a unique experience of first growing up in Colombia, and then you lived in on the East Coast, but then you've lived now on the West Side for the last 5 or 6 years. And so I wanted to get your take on the different way that Latinos celebrated on the East Coast versus on the West Coast. Because on the West Side, you're immersed in Mexican and Central American culture. I mean, we don't even call it. I don't think we call it novena. We call it posadas. Maybe Central America calls it novena, but I mean, I've heard the word before, and every now and then it's mentioned, but we know them as posadas. So the other thing that I'll mention is that growing up, my mom switched from being Catholic to Christian, so she stopped celebrating Christmas at some point. So I grew up with this stuff, but I grew up around it. It never really in my home. I knew that, like, if I went to my uncles or to relatives, this is what they were doing. In Mexico, we used to do posadas, but once my mom went full Christian, we stopped doing all this stuff. So I kind of watched
you
from a distance.
You didn't even go to the church during this time to do the novenas. You had to show up every nine days in order to get a gift at the end. So you never did the gift, that la novena de aguinaldo.
We did that in Mexico, but but when I was a kid. So my memories are just going back to when I was a kid, but after a certain point, we didn't do that anymore.
Interesting. Yeah, so for what we just played is a villancico, y los villancicos navideños are the songs that you sing during this time. And I think the tradition comes, I think some of it from Spain, from sort of the chorus, celebration of of the birth of Jesus, of the upcoming birth of Jesus. Um, the villancicos are some of the songs. Tutaina is one of the songs that is very popular in Colombia. But basically, how it works is that it is a novena. You are praying, but the songs are a little better. As a little kid, you can make your own instrument. So I used to make like a little pandoreto with just you take a bunch of like jarrito caps, the metallic caps. You flatten them. You put a hole in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
you put a string on it, and then you have a musical instrument that you can play at the novenas and follow along and have a good time. But obviously, the reason that the poor kids in the neighborhood did it was because you wanted to go to mass and get a gift, and to some kids, it might have been the only gift that they got during the Christmas time because their families were so poor. So, that's one of the important one. That's sort of my memories of the villancicos y la novena colombiana, which is a time where you do it at the church and then some families do it at home because everybody has a little nacimiento a pesebre, um, commemorating or getting ready for the birth of Jesus, who was a Jew and who happened to be born a year of a census, part of the reason why he was traveling back. So I just wanted to do that historical side
So
note.
in Mexico, it wasn't. I don't remember it being done at the church, even though the town had a church. We used to do it at a house. So it was always the same house from the same family in the town, and they would go around the town singing the posadas to every house, and then at the end they would go back to that house, and then I think there were some prayers, and then afterwards the aguinaldos, because I always remember being so restless, couldn't wait for the prayers to be over so we could have aguinaldos, and they used to make this
That's right.
delicious champurrado with and then they'd give us cookies. I forget what kind of
Hmm.
cookies they were, but they're so good. So, but again, that's Mexico. Once we moved to the U.S., I mean, right here, that sense of community doesn't really exist, where
Yeah.
people go out and do posadas. Even although there have been times in the past where I've driven around certain neighborhoods and I've seen groups of people actually going from house to house doing posadas. I was like, well, that's strange. Never seen that before here.
Hmm. Well, it's funny because obviously that was a tradition in Colombia, but then when I got to the East Coast, I got exposed to how other Latin American countries celebrated. And one of the countries that I was exposed to was Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
And in Puerto Rico, they called posadas parrandas. And the tradition is, I think it started partly with the same intent, but obviously it's Puerto Rico, so people make it funner and better. So they did parrandas and
How
they
to,
do asaltos navideños. Yeah, so basically they just, I think probably after they do the praying, then they start going house to house with their band. So
mm-hmm.
they have músicos and people are drinking, having a good time. And it's a asalto navideño. You come to somebody's house, they need to give you drinks, food, all that stuff. People's having a good time, and then the people from that house join the parade and go to the next house. And so they do that in the whole neighborhood, having a good time. Basically, a block party
Yeah.
in el barrio.
If they call the posadas parrandas, what do they call parrandas?
Fiesta rumbones. Yeah, they have other.
They have other
Yeah, I'm
names.
telling you, the Puerto Ricans, Cubans, and folks are at another level.
um, and so what was your experience moving from the East Coast to the West Coast and then seeing the traditions over here?
Yeah, first of all, I think the knowing what a posada was, I was like, oh, that's a novena. Okay, I know that. But I think the biggest difference is the additional element of La Virgen Maria, or La
Mm.
Virgen de Guadalupe. And I should say for those of our listeners who are or may not be Latino, if you're from Latin America, usually once December starts, I think everything starts slowing down and is about las fiestas de fin de año, is about celebrating with your family, is about not doing a lot of work, doing more partying, giving gifts. So in Colombia, actually, the season starts on the 6th and the 7th, con el Día de las Velitas. People do velitas outside of their homes, but they also do fireworks. So it's kind of like our 4th of July, but in December. So it starts there, but then when I came to to the West
to
Coast,
Little
to
Mexico,
LA.
you were gonna say?
Yeah, when I came to the West Coast, it was about celebrating La Virgen on the 11th, and the fact that Mexicans go to mass at night, at midnight, to celebrate their Virgin. And I was like, wait, what? You go
Yeah,
to mass at midnight? That's dedication.
I don't, but
Or you're used to, right? Or some
uh,
people do it. Yeah, not everybody does. I think it's
never at midnight. No.
the hardcore believers, and it's crazy because okay, that's cool, that's interesting, and then you sort of appreciate all the meaning behind La Virgen de Guadalupe, which also um, represents Tonantzin, which was an indigenous deity
Hmm.
that sort of, that the Mexicans rightfully so were, they did sincronismo. They were able to preserve their culture, their religion by implanting a indigenous goddess into a Spaniard goddess or Catholic goddess in this case. So anyway, so that was one of the fascinating um, twists that I
So,
experienced about Navidad here in the West Coast.
so it sounds like you've actually participated in that as well, then.
Yeah, ironically, I did participate in that, and I participated that in the East Coast in Maryland. So
Hmm.
that was Maryland is a part of Maryland. Most of Maryland is NDC, Salvadoreños,
Right.
and people from all the parts. But then in that particular part of Maryland is a bunch of Mexicans. So my partner found the Mexican church, and one day decided to do it. And actually, I haven't gone with her. I know that she's gone, and she told me what that experience was like. And I was like, "Huh, that's interesting." No, I still like my sleep a lot better.
Yeah.
Uh,
I've
but it's
never. Yeah.
amazing, and then not only that, it's also they usually have Aztec dancers. So you have a very strong representation of the native culture because you have Aztec. Like in order to have a good Dia de la Virgen, you need the indigenous element.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna mention earlier when I said that I haven't, at least not in the U.S. I don't haven't gone to church at midnight, but in Mexico, they used to do that because they had the mass at night, and then they always had the Aztec dancers as well. So I,
Hmm.
I did get to experience that as a young kid in Mexico, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, look, I didn't really understand much of it when I was a kid because I was my siblings before me, they checked every single box for Catholic, baptized,
Confirmed.
confirmation,
Well,
yeah,
baptized, confirmed. Yeah.
yeah, confirmation, and then first communion. But I didn't do any of that. I mean, I'm baptized. That's about it. I'm on the rolls for the Catholic Church. I told you the story once, right? About
That's
the
all that matters.
yeah, how I try to get off those rolls, but they make it really hard for you now. So apparently, I'm a Catholic for life, but just on paper. But I never did my first communion. I never did
The
confirmation.
sacraments. You
Right,
didn't do
right.
the other sacraments.
Because I told my mom switched to a different religion. She just went to the other side, and so we stopped a lot of these things. I stopped participating in them, but I do have the memories of them from when I was growing up in Mexico. So you've actually participated in more of these um, ceremonies, either on the East
Yeah.
Coast or on the West Coast, than I have.
Well, I think it's beautiful, and it's amazing that you and I are connected at this level because I think it's beautiful that I experience what you experience as a grown man here in LA. And basically, what people do here in LA is try to recreate that Mexico experience in their backyard.
Yeah,
And I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, we went to a backyard in East LA,
yeah,
a regular house with a big backyard with a whole bunch of people with I think they had a banda too. I think no, not a banda, a mariachi because again, very important for the Dia de la Virgen needs to be serenaded by a mariachi band and by danzantes aztecas. So make
yeah,
sure that you guys remember that. So it was amazing because I was like, wait, why are these people here? And obviously the neighbors and others are part of the celebration. And the danzantes come on, everybody's having a good time. Then there's champurrado and all these amazing pastries and tamales, and like you realize that some poor abuelitas, tías, hermanas, hermanos, y bueno, y ahora que los hombres, they're helping out a little bit more in that tradition, but not much. But you realize that somebody spent a lot of time cooking
Yeah.
a couple of days in order to prepare for this big celebration.
I didn't know that. So this was a backyard. What was the event? What was it? What did the invitation say, or what did people that invited you say they were celebrating?
So the reason I went is because my partner is a danzante, so she got invited
Yeah.
to dance, to do that. And actually, she belongs to a group that dances. And around this time, as they're busiest, because they're doing it in homes and churches in different places. So folks actually danzantes get paid to go to the celebrations and obviously and for those of you who may not be familiar with Native culture, dancing, the important that well in Native and African culture as well, dancing is very spiritual. And when you play music, one of the reasons that music moves your soul is because the one of the original intents of music was prayer. So people, when the reason why they have the danzantes and they have the tambores is because to them their music and their song is a prayer. So that's one of the powerful things that which the Catholics believe in too as well. Because I remember growing up as a monaguillo or altar boy, I remember a priest saying that or the Bible actually says like el que canta reza dos veces.
Mm-hmm.
So if you sing really good, you're actually praying twice. So as a good Catholic, you definitely want to have the best voice. But unfortunately, I wasn't blessed with that voice, as you know, as you heard in the beginning of this episode.
And so you believed him when he said that? You still believe that today?
Well, I think I believe in the sentiment because when you think about something that's really beautiful, like yes, people talking can be beautiful, but somebody singing, it's just the type when somebody sings, and depending on what the song it is, but when there's something beautiful, when there's something a cappella, a song that just captures you, and somebody who has a powerful voice.
Yeah.
And then if you're, and then in the Catholic, it's almost like a minimalist because it's all about the singers, it's about the piano, maybe other instruments. But then, and then you add other elements. So for African and native cultures, indigenous cultures, la música, el tambor, is such an important part of praying and celebrating.
You make Catholicism sound so appealing. You're telling me that you were experiencing all this while I was at church with my mom and people were doing exorcisms in her church?
No, it's funny because I know I came from a very conservative Catholic background because, we had a voice chorus and maybe the instrument that we had was like a guitar. That was it. And then I remember around that time there were some iglesias evangélicas, which probably one of the churches of your mom's. And it's actually fascinating for people who may not know that La Iglesia Universal actually started in Brazil. And there's this documentary on Netflix, not documentary, it's a movie made by the guy who became the pastor of that church, talks about his experience. But it's funny because then you go to those services and they had tambores and all this music, and it's like, oh wow, this is good music. I want to come pray here. And it's like, no, you need to go to the serious one. But then eventually Catholics adjusted to that strategy, so they also made the band good. And I know here in the United States, when I think it might have been you who told me that Creed was a religious song. Yeah. I was like, what are you talking about? That's rock and roll, man. Can you take me higher?
Yeah.
I was like, oh no, Christian now rock. I get it. Now I understand the lyrics.
No, but I'm serious about my mom's church. The local church in the neighborhood where we grew up, they literally did an exorcism once on somebody there because they thought the woman was possessed. Imagine how old was I? I must have been like 10 or 11. You
were like, what is happening?
It was crazy. You see them rubbing their hands against their back saying, sácate, sácate. Wow. The poor girl foaming at the mouth. She falls on the floor and her body starts convulsing. I thought she probably had a seizure. And they were were pretending that she had a demon, and the poor girl on the floor with foam coming out of her mouth and not giving her any medical attention. And so, yeah, anyway.
Did it work?
I don't remember.
You kind of missed the most important part of the story, didn't you?
What I don't remember. Maybe I blocked it out because it's traumatizing.
Yeah.
Anyway, going back to the posadas and the spirit of Christmas. So the what about the tradition of the tamales? Is that something that is also you got to experience on the East Coast? Like what's the preferred dish for Christmas?
Well, I got to experience that in Colombia. We do have tamales, and maybe because I'm biased, but I think Colombia tamales are better.
How do you guys
I
make them?
welcome.
Do you guys make them with the banana leaves or with the
Yes, yes,
corn?
sir. The banana leaves. So very different style, and they're big. They're a lot bigger than the Mexican tamales.
So I don't like the big ones because they it's just the proportion of masa to meat is not the proportions are just not right for me. Those big ones always have too much masa.
No, yeah, but when you have the not as much masa and good carne, that's how we like them. That's the best tamal for a Colombian. A nice balance, a perfect balance of just enough masa, but then enough tamal
Hmm.
to give it that flavor.
Okay, and so you guys also then for Christmas is making tamales.
Yeah, making tamales, and then the other big piece is natilla y buñuelos. So la natilla es como it's almost like a pie, and I know I've heard some it's like a yellow. It's yellow, but not really yellow, right? It has a thicker consistency, natilla.
Yeah,
And then you make the natilla and usually have it with buñuelos. And los buñuelos colombianos son redondos, son bolitas de queso, so the little cheese balls. So that's buñuelos for me. So it took me a while to understand that Mexicans call buñuelos differently, and so do Salvadorians. And
yeah.
I'm like,
For
no, a Colombian
their
buñuelo is a perfect buñuelo.
yeah they're round and flat and pretty wide.
Yeah, and delicious, and go perfect with a nice homemade natilla.
Yeah. And so now that you're here on the west side, so then in your house, do you guys make Central American tamales, Mexican or Colombian? Which ones?
It's a combination of things. So we have amazing Salvadorian and Mexican tamales, and then we buy the Colombian natilla and buñuelos from a Colombian restaurant. We learned about the beautiful elixir of Christmas from Puerto Rico, coquito, which is so good, so delicious. It's like I want to say eggnog because that's insulting coquito.
Mm-hmm.
It's better than eggnog. But anyway, so we make coquito, and so it's this mismatch of traditions, and then obviously you add the the gifts and the Santa Claus and the nacimiento. So it's a convergence of where we've been and all of the cultures that impact us. And I think maybe if we were a more diverse family, we might be celebrating Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and doing all these things, which I know is what a lot of families are now doing because they have people from those backgrounds.
And that sounds great to me. And that's actually for people out there, that is one of the reasons why you want to surround yourself with people of different backgrounds, different cultures, marry into a different culture. Those are some of the benefits because you get to experience all of that. Something that is sometimes there's some overlap, but then there's a lot of differences. But even within the overlap, like Mexican tamales versus Colombian tamales, there's so many differences also. And so yeah, it makes for a rich experience during the holidays to be able to appreciate all that. I grew up here in LA and in Mexico. Most of my exposure has always been Mexican celebration and some Central American, but the differences between Central America and Mexico are smaller. Never actually experienced some of the like the Puerto Rican to see what the Puerto Ricans how they get down, or even the Colombians. Sounds fun.
Yeah, and I have to say I grew up as a very Catholic, and I remember when I moved to the United States, I remained a Catholic, not as involved, but I did meet a girl in high school, and she became my friend, and actually she became my first love interest, ese primer amor que Todos estuvimos in high school. But the thing was that she was a Seventh-day Adventist.
Mm.
So she invited me, and I attended a few of those services, and I attended part of it, claro, por la amistad y después por el amor,
Yeah.
pero también por la curiosidad, ¿no? I wanted to kind of get
Yeah.
a sense of like, oh, let me be there. It looks bad, and people tell me it's not the same as Catholic, but let me just see it and check it out. And it's different. And I feel like I was criticizing it, but at least I tried it, no?
Yeah.
Lo probé, lo entendí, and I think it just reinforced to me that everybody has a different version of doing this. And then I remember when I also got to DC, I was invited to my first Jewish Passover celebration, because I really didn't grow up with a lot of Jewish friends. I had maybe one or two, but it's not like they invited me over, right, to have these types of traditions. So I was invited once, and just appreciating I think it's Seder, Seder, cider. I think it's cider. I'm sorry, my Spanish accent sometimes confuses my pronunciations of words. But it's the Jewish celebration of Passover, and it was just a beautiful tradition, and to be invited and to learn about it. And I think for me, it's always been like just being respectful and appreciating that people believe and practice those beliefs very differently.
Yeah. Yeah. Those backyard parties that you were mentioning sound pretty fun. I think my mom used to go to church, but it was a service just like any other day. And I think the pastor used to just criticize Catholics for celebrating Christmas, saying how they were wrong in their ways. My mom didn't just, you have to understand, my mom just didn't convert and become a Christian. And for Catholics, for Mexican Catholics, a lot of them are very laid back about their belief system, but they do celebrate a lot of these things. They do adhere to the ceremonies and to the norms around Christmas and the holidays. But my mom was like super into her religion, so a bit of a zealot, and so we didn't have any of the frames of Jesus or even the Virgin Mary, so you didn't see no altars, none of that stuff, because they all consider them false idols. And so yeah, she would just go to church. I don't even think we had a Christmas tree, to be honest, at home. And I think we got gifts, but the only reason why we had gifts is because our uncles would swing by and give us gifts. So at a certain point, just leaving that small town in Mexico where everyone was Catholic, and I got to experience all that, coming to LA and being detached from my community in Mexico and just having some family members around me, it gave me like, it's just, I've had a different relationship now with Christmas, where it's way more detached than what yours is, especially with the religious aspect to it. So I think even within Mexicans, my experience is very unique. If you meet other Mexicans that are more at least as devoted as you are to Catholicism, then you're going to see a lot more that goes into how they observe and celebrate Christmas.
Yeah, and it's funny because I want to mention that in the posadas you also have the priest, and sometimes, and that actually at that party there was a priest who came to give the mass there, or just to do a prayer. So you have the priest, the mariachi, and then danzantes. But I think one of the reasons why Christmas is such a fun and popular time is because you also then have Christmas music. And I think most Christmas music in Latin America, and I guess you can make an argument in the United States, is fun, but particularly in Latin America, it's about dancing. And again, going back to those parrandas, going back to the fiestas de alumbrados and the fin de año, like there's this desire, there's this happiness that comes with the music and hearing those music and remembering those times where you might have been poor, but you were outside your house, drinking, having a good time, dancing outside, playing with your kids and your friends, and having a good time. So it's also a time that reminds you about family, right? And that brings family together.
Yeah.
And that I think around this time may be even more powerful because of the separation. So this is going to be one of the first Christmases that I'm not going to see my mom, and I'm still processing that. myself.
Yeah, that's true. I think when you mentioned music, it reminded me that I think that connection to the music, I have that connection to the Spanish songs, even like the lame songs like El Burrito Sabanero and all the other.
Mi burrito sabanero, mi camino de
But
Belén.
I have that connection to them because, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your singing. You can continue singing
Damn.
if you
And I'm
want.
sorry because I started in a low key. I was telling Herrero that I was blessed with a high pitched voice. So
Yeah. Because growing up in Mexico, I have that connection to those songs. So if I hear them, I do get that nostalgia, and I do get this Christmas spirit. In the U.S., it's a little more complicated for me because, to the extent that I grew up with these songs, I must have experienced them at a later age. So now when I walk into into the store, and when I walk into the grocery store, and I turn on the radio, and some stations are playing Christmas music, it's really hard for me to disassociate just the pure essence of the music with Christmas and the consumerism aspect of it.
yeah.
It even annoys me sometimes. Yeah, it annoys me a lot sometimes when I walk into a place and I hear a song that I've probably heard already for 3 or 4 times the same week. Sometimes even multiple times during the same day if you're going to multiple places. But it just, I walk in and I hear the song and fuck, I feel like, here we go again.
Yeah.
And I think like, man, maybe I shouldn't have this reaction. Maybe I shouldn't be such a grouch. Maybe I should just enjoy it. But then I can't stop thinking about how they exploit this season. Just, they play the music to put you in a good mood, because if you're in a good mood, you're more likely to shop more.
And you're gonna buy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like it's become a drug. It's this rush that Americans get now that they couldn't even, like, the posadas are 9 days, and you might think, well, that's a long time. But now in America, Christmas starts right after Thanksgiving. Sometimes even before Thanksgiving, you already start hearing the music.
Thanksgiving, yeah.
Yeah. And dude, they're so addicted to that feeling of the Christmas season.
Well, it's shopping therapy, dude.
Yeah,
shopping therapy.
it's some type of therapy. There's some addictive aspect to it as well, because it seems like just people just eat all that. Like they love it. I've gone to family gatherings where the Christmas music pops up during Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
That's how much people crave that Christmas feeling. In a way, it's good, but also that's like whenever you have a dependence on something that you have to celebrate for a whole month because you want to be in that good mood, because that's what gets you in a good mood. I was like, man, maybe that's a little bit too much for me. And then also the corporations are exploiting it. So yeah, it's really hard for me to disassociate all these like bad aspects of it. That's why sometimes when I'm driving and I do listen to Un Burrito Sabanero, even though it's a really cheesy song, it's a more pure experience for me to just hear that. Even though
simpler times,
maybe, and even though in Spanish they're probably using that to try to drive consumerism also, but I don't have that association. Maybe because I don't listen to enough Spanish radio, and you don't hear El Burrito Sabanero in every single store that you get, so it's not playing over and over, right? So you don't get tired of it. Yeah.
That's funny, because the day you hear Burrito Sabanero during Christmas in a store, you know the Latinos have made it. And then the other thing I was gonna say, I mean, the thing with Puerto Rican music is you have, they have like songs like this, like Cantares de Navidad. So es un poquito más movido.
Yeah, it's dancing.
Más caribeño.
Oh yeah.
And then the line.
Well, there's a lot of dancing, right, in Puerto Rican and Cuban.
Unos están alegres, otros están llorando. So yeah, so it's that type of music that takes you back.
Yeah, man. I love to. I'm gonna try to reach out to some of my Puerto Rican friends that I've lost contact with, and see if at some point I can squeeze in a Christmas experience with them. Sounds like fun. Dominicans
Sign
too.
me up too.
Yeah.
Yes, everywhere in Latin America. I think it's in some ways it's hard to travel during Christmas because that's the time you're supposed to be with family. So I think that's why New Year's is a good alternative, because the Christmas parties are the build up, or should be the build up to the end of year celebration.
Yeah, and also I think if people are interested in traveling across Latin America, that would be a perfect time to travel, to spend
Yeah.
Christmas with a friend in some place in Latin America, or even New Year's. Just because everyone is generally happy around that time, the festivities, and yeah, you have so much fun. There's a lot of partying too.
Most people are not working as much or not working at all. There's music, there's parties, there's concerts, there's foods with dinners, food with friends, dinners, a bunch of other stuff. So
Cool,
it's a
yeah.
good time.
So sounds good. So since we're on the topic, so hope you enjoy your Christmas. Sorry to hear that you're not going to be able to spend it with your mom. But I'm glad that you do have other relatives and extended family that you can be around, spend your
Hmm.
time with them.
Yes, yes, and appreciative for the miracle of modern technology and FaceTime or face to face, as we call it, and other technology that allows you to at least see people through video.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Cool. Pues, any parting words?
Yes, I think. Thank you for the conversation, and I think I want to finish. I want to highlight something that you said towards the end. That it's a difficult time for a lot of people. It's a good time for some others. But bottom line, I know that this time is a time where you um, celebrate or come together as a family to get the energy, the drive, the comfort that you need to start a new fight next year. But I think to your point, I think just remembering what's really important is not about the gifts. It's not about, how much that gift is or the clothes and the brands, getting a Lexus in the driveway. It's not about that material stuff. It's really about the relationships and the people in that room or the other people, your extended family who you celebrate Christmas and the end of New Year. Think about those relationships, about that love, and so many people that who are there for you and who have been there with you, particularly this year through these difficult times. So remember the spirit and the reason why Las Navidades is such a special time.
Well said. All right. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Nos vemos.
Ciao.